I'm Jed. I'm the VP of Platform Strategy here at Dataiku. Been with the company since it was a little bitty French company, and now it's a big American company. I'm very happy to be here today. Today, we're going to be talking about what Dataiku is building in the future and where we are right now, and kind of why we are where we are. If we go back to the opening keynote, you all saw this slide in the morning. What we're really trying to figure out is how to help you get to the right-hand side of the screen. For the last year or so, I've had to talk about Gen AI every day. Probably a bunch of you have to also. And I've really been talking about Gen AI in two very separate ways, specifically within Dataiku. I talk about Gen AI on Dataiku and Gen AI in Dataiku. So what do I mean by that? When I'm talking about Gen AI in Dataiku, it is people leveraging Dataiku to build Gen AI applications or to leverage Gen AI for use cases. So let's say I have a bunch of contracts in a folder, and I want to pull out the termination clause for every one of those contracts. All right, I'm going to do that in a prompt engineering recipe in Dataiku, and then I get my endpoint data set, right? That's in Dataiku. The other way of using it is LLMs on Dataiku. In this case, it's much more about augmenting the actual work people are doing. So we can kind of think of this as like the copilot type of situation where, oh, I'm inside of a prepare recipe, and now I can just ask in plain text to have all my columns with 4 capital letters be concatenated, or all my dates get transformed into Unix time, whatever it might be. Or have a automatic description of the flow that I just built. These are they have been two very separate concepts. Using LLMs inside of a flow and leveraging LLMs to build things. An agent combines these two concepts together. It's both augmenting your user's ability to work within Dataiku, while at the same time helping them leverage LLMs on their own workflows. They really, really were different, and now an agent is trying to bring them together. What this means is that people should be able to build out Gen AI pipelines much, much faster and on many more products with much less expertise. But that doesn't mean that all of our jobs are going to go away. I think that's the big fear. It's like, oh no, what are we going to do? I was just in a room with somebody, with a client, who I won't name because I didn't ask permission for it, but, and they mentioned that they had been building out a pipeline for months that then they were able to have a relatively untrained non-developer come in and build using visual recipes in Dataiku in, I think they said 10 days, which was amazing. And now it's a Gen AI application inside of their product. I think we're going to see an expansion of this, not a decrease in users, but an increase in the number of people who are able to build these things out. So no, it's not going to be the domain of developers. Just as how data science has become democratized, LLMs are going to become democratized through this agent concept. So how is Dataiku actually helping you move towards this idea of agents? There's kind of 3 main areas in which we're focusing on. One is, this first one that I've talked about a lot already, is creating and accelerating Gen AI use cases. The second one is a good governance framework to do this safely. And then finally is XOps. So we got tired of having all the different sub-ops, so we know it's XOps, for monitoring and tracking and controlling all of these things that you're actually putting out. Let's talk about Gen AI use cases first. What we rolled out over the last year, something that I've talked about many, many times now, is LLM mesh. The concept of LLM mesh is not very different from the core concept of what Dataiku has always been. So when we started, I mentioned we were that little bitty French company. When we were a little bitty French company, we came to the United States and first got traction in the United States because we were the best interface in the world to sit on top of Hadoop and Teradata and Greenplum. I see our first big client in the United States right here giving me a thumbs up when I said that, so that's good. And the promise of Dataiku today is not so very different. We are the best interface in the world to sit on top of the wide variety of LLM flavors in the market, just as we're the best interface in the world to sit on top of Databricks or Snowflake. We are not providing our own LLM. We are providing your users the ability to interact with any of a wide variety of LLMs from all 3 different cloud providers, as well as all the major independent providers, as well as your on-prem Hugging Face models, through a single interface that provides security, caching, RAG, audit trail, filtering, and then the visual recipes on top of these things so that the maximum number of users in your organization can build tools themselves. That's the promise of LLM Mesh. By staying out of the game of building our own LLM, we make sure that we're not biased towards what your users need. We're going to let your users connect to the LLM that they might need for their specific workflow without having any skin in the game and pushing you into the wrong thing. That's similarly to how we connect to all different databases, right? It's really the same kind of promise and the same premise that we've proved for the last 10 years that we can do very well. We've also proved over the last 10 years that we evolve with the market. I mentioned Hadoop a couple minutes ago. Obviously, not a lot of people are running major stuff on Hadoop anymore. They are instead running major stuff on Databricks and Snowflake and the major cloud providers. We were AI Partner of the Year for both Databricks and Snowflake last year. We were AI Partner of the Year for AWS. We work with the new technologies as they evolve. We make sure we integrate with those technologies as they evolve so that you don't have to worry about it. And we're going to do the same thing with LLMs. Speaking of which, pretty excited to talk about what's come out in like the last couple weeks. We have added support for Mixtral and Hugging Face. We have rolled out additional integrations with Databricks and Snowflake. I just mentioned them, but the new Databricks model, the DBRX, integrations with Snowflake Cortex, and for self-deployed models, we're really excited about this. We're announcing, like, I guess this week, integrations with both NVIDIA, so you can roll out NVIDIA models and then integrate with them through LLM Mesh, and TitanML. Both of those folks will be on stage, I think, maybe immediately after this, pretty soon after this. So it's really exciting to hear. And yeah, we're continuing to iterate and make all of this better every single week. It's literally a large portion of what our devs are working on. We are also rolling out more advanced features, not with the actual LLM integrations themselves, but tracking and monitoring and ownership of these LLMs. So this includes Dataiku's LLM Cost Guard, allows you to track exactly who is spending what money across which different services inside of your organization. Obviously, LLMs come in a wide variety of flavors and prices, and keeping track of exactly who's burning down those credits is very important. By having it in Dataiku instead of tracking it, let's say, in AWS or Azure or GCP, means that as you have a proliferation of different LLMs inside your organization, you have one place to go to keep track of the cost. Similarly, we have usage monitoring, so you can see who's doing what. We keep a full audit log of every single LLM call that goes through Dataiku, so you can understand exactly what people are using it for. And then finally, we're adding additional advanced guardrails. Some of this is a little too technical, but things like toxicity detection on-prem without needing to call out to a third party. Nice stuff like that. I won't get too into that. Moving on, governance. So for those of you who attended the exec session this morning, you already heard me talk about governance for like 20 minutes. But for everyone else in the room, governance is obviously an incredibly important part of rolling all of this out, both for reasons of GDPR or other governmental compliance, as well as for the very good reasons of making sure that you're being safe and secure and not putting anything at risk. And also, Governance allows you to know exactly where all your projects are within the flow of the development process. We're rolling out Advanced Govern. We will keep, as part of Advanced Govern, we do have a GenAI portfolio. So all of the GenAI projects that you're deploying across your different Dataiku instances in your organization can be tracked and overviewed in a single spot inside of Govern. In addition, we're rolling out an LLM registry, which means every LLM that you build, you can have a single place to look at it, understand where it is, understand where it's being used across multiple projects, provide access to those LLMs to different users, etc. And then finally, we are ensuring that we have a business solution that shows how you can abide by the EU AI Act readiness. So ensuring that these regulations don't come and bite you is something that we are very cognizant of. We've had our GDPR plugin for several years now. We want to make sure that you don't get caught off guard while you're leveraging all this fancy new stuff. Finally, efficiency everywhere with XOps. I'm actually very excited about this. We've been working on this since before LLMs came onto the scene and completely averted everybody's roadmap. So I'm happy that this is being rolled out now, despite the fact that LLMs are completely overshadowing it. One thing that we understand is very critical about Dataiku is that we live within a larger ecosystem. You heard me mention earlier about Hadoop and how we fit on top of Hadoop, we fit on top of LLMs, and we also fit in between a lot of cloud products, other products, lots of different places where you might want to deploy machine learning models. So just because Dataiku is in an organization, maybe somebody else is writing PySpark code in a Databricks notebook and they're deploying their models on SageMaker. That's a completely plausible thing that I see all the time. We want Dataiku to both be able to deploy models, not just on our own API service managed Kubernetes clusters, but also into Azure, into SageMaker, into Google Vertex, into Databricks, into Snowflake. We want to make sure that Dataiku can meet your production needs wherever you've decided to centralize your model deployment. It's more common to have multiple tools for development than it is to have multiple tools for production deployments because people want to be able to monitor all their production deployments in one place. In addition to being able to deploy models anywhere, Dataiku has now included the ability to track models that are deployed outside of it. So let's say I have that same example. I have some models being developed in Databricks, some models being developed in Dataiku, maybe somebody's writing a Jupyter notebook somewhere, and we're deploying all of them onto SageMaker. Dataiku can keep track of every model deployed on SageMaker, as well as models, maybe somebody's deploying something locally on Dataiku. We have a unified monitoring location for tracking all deployed models, whether Dataiku deployed them or not. So this makes it so that we can live within this flexible ecosystem and still provide you a single pane of glass for understanding what's going on. I think it's really cool. In addition, we are now operationalizing data quality with a much more rigor. We'll say rigor. That sounds about right. For a long time, if you've used Dataiku for a long time, you're familiar with metrics and checks. We've greatly evolved the metrics and checks concept with our most recent release. We can now keep track of data quality rules across input, output, any data sets, even across entire flows. This makes sure that your pipelines are taking the data that is actually right, performing the modifications you need, and putting out the data that you actually can trust. Previously to this, it took a lot of work, and it was a little finicky, I'll be honest. And now I think it's actually a much smoother operation and provides a lot more interactive feedback, easier to track through our APIs. It's a great interface. Check it out. I love it. In closing, what I wanted to leave you all with is it's actually something that our CTO, Clement, said to me recently. And what he said is that the promise of Gen AI and the capabilities of Gen AI are inverse to the originality of the problem they're trying to solve. What that means to me is that Gen AI is going to take away a lot of the repetitive, mundane aspects of our work. But the first time we need to solve a brand new problem, it's still going to be on us. And that's very exciting to me. I think that what that means is that all of us get to be a lot more inventive, or we all get to look for new jobs. Dataiku is going to help you be more inventive. It's going to minimize that mundane aspect of your workloads, and it's going to make sure you do it in a safe, governed manner with the right cost controls, the right auditability, and the right safety in place. So thank you all very much.